The studio lights dimmed slightly. Music blasted through the speakers as the announcer's voice echoed across the packed audience. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Elon Musk. The crowd erupted into cheers. Phones were up. Applause bounced off the studio walls. Jimmy Kimmel stood at the side of the stage, smiling wide, his cue cards in hand. Elon Musk, dressed in a sleek, dark blazer over a plain black t-shirt, walked in with his usual casual swagger. But something about him was different tonight. He waved, nodded, gave a half smile just enough to acknowledge the crowd, but not enough to hide the tightness in his jaw. His eyes scanned the room quickly, then settled on Jimmy as they shook hands. "Welcome back, Elon," Jimmy said, guiding him to the interview couch. "I was beginning to think you were spending all your time on Mars." The audience laughed. Elon smiled politely. "Not yet. Still working on the ticket pricing," he replied. The banter was smooth as expected. Jimmy joked about Elon's tweets, asked about Dogecoin, and even teased him about naming his child like a secret NASA code. Elon played along, his answers quick and dry, but always guarded. Nothing too personal, nothing too risky. But the energy in the room wasn't quite right. Behind the cameras, producers moved differently. One leaned over to whisper something to another. The showrunner stood still, watching Elon closely from behind the main monitor. They weren't laughing, they weren't relaxed. They were waiting and watching. Jimmy shifted the tone slightly. "So, let's talk about Neuralink. You're still planning to connect our brains to computers, right? Should I be worried you'll download my dreams?" More laughter. Elon shrugged. "Depends how boring they are." The audience cracked up again, but Elon's smile faded just a second too fast. His hands tightened in his lap. His left foot tapped once against the stage floor. "Oh, you've always talked about saving the future," Jimmy continued, now flipping through his cue cards. "Clean energy, AI safety, space travel, all that good stuff. But I gotta ask you because my writers would kill me if I didn't." Elon looked over sharply. Jimmy paused, lifted his eyebrows playfully and said, "Some people think you're just as good at working people as you are at working machines. What do you say to all the noise about how your companies treat their workers?" The laughter stopped. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was sharp. Elon leaned back slightly. He didn't answer immediately. His fingers tapped the edge of the couch cushion. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes narrowed just enough to give something away. Jimmy chuckled, trying to soften the blow. "Hey, hi, Mig. Just the messenger. If you've got fans and critics, you've heard it before." Elon finally spoke. "Yeah," he said slowly, "I've heard it. And I've also seen how much progress people ignore while focusing on problems they barely understand." That response brought a few awkward claps. A handful of people in the crowd nodded, but others stayed quiet. Even Jimmy looked unsure for a moment. The camera operator adjusted his focus. "So," Jimmy went on, clearing his throat, "for example, those reports from the Tesla plant. You know, long hours, no bathroom breaks, injuries," Elon interrupted. "Those reports came from a handful of sources, some of whom weren't even employees anymore. It's not the full picture, okay?" Jimmy said lightly. "What's the full picture?" Elon's jaw tightened again. "We are trying to do something very hard, change the world. That comes with pressure. That comes with risk. But we take care of our people." He wasn't raising his voice, but his tone had sharpened. Each word hit the air like it was carefully carved. Something had shifted in him. Something behind the public face was coming closer to the surface. The studio was unusually quiet now. "Fair enough," Jimmy said, trying to read him. "But I guess the real question is, how do you balance saving the world and saving the humans doing the saving?" Elon tilted his head. "I don't think. It's helpful when people who've never run a company, never built a product, or taken a risk try to decide how innovation should work." Jimmy gave a quick laugh, but it didn't land well. Even he looked thrown. From the corner of the stage, a producer made a sharp gesture. Another one picked up a headset. Jimmy smiled again, but it was thinner now. "'Kay, let's talk about something fun. SpaceX, you launching anything cool soon?" Elon nodded, but said nothing for a second too long. "Then, yeah, we'll be launching Starship again. Bigger than ever, faster, safer. The future is coming." He was back to talking about rockets, but his body language hadn't relaxed. The crowd clapped politely. Backstage, someone whispered into a mic, "Something's brewing." Out front, Elon adjusted his blazer. He looked out into the audience, not at them, but through them, almost like he expected something. Or someone. And then Jimmy reached for a new card. "Well, this is the last one before the break," he said. "And I know you're going to love this one, Elon." Elon's head turned slowly. Jimmy read aloud. "A former employee recently said working at Tesla felt like being trapped in a dream where you're running from something but can't wake up. Any thoughts?" The crowd reacted with a mix of chuckles and raised eyebrows. Elon didn't react at all. He didn't blink. He didn't laugh. And his smile, what was left of it, vanished. The audience didn't breathe. Elon Musk sat perfectly still on the couch, blinking once, then again slower this time. The lights felt brighter. The silence around him was no longer comfortable. It was surgical. Jimmy Kimmel adjusted in his chair, looking for a way to lighten the moment. "Hey, just reading the cards," he said with a nervous chuckle, lifting them slightly for the camera as if to prove he wasn't taking sides. "This is live TV, folks." Elon turned his head. "That's the problem, Jimmy. Everything's for the camera now." His voice was low, calm, but sharp enough to cut glass. The audience murmured, sensing a shift. This wasn't the eccentric billionaire cracking jokes about AI anymore. This was something else. A man being pushed into a corner, or maybe a man who had chosen to step out of one. Jimmy pressed on, trying to pivot. "Okay, well, people have strong opinions." "No, that's part of being no," Elon interrupted. "That's part of a media machine that survives by controversy, not context." From backstage, the floor manager motioned subtly. The teleprompter operator hesitated before switching scripts. The segment was clearly drifting off course. Then something happened. A subtle movement from the third row of the audience, barely noticed by the cameras. A woman in a red jacket shifted forward in her seat. Her eyes locked on Elon. Her hand reached for something inside her coat. The security team didn't react. Not yet. Jimmy cleared his throat, reaching for a safer question. "So, Elon, Starlink just expanded to another 14 countries, but he didn't finish the sentence." A voice, sharp and clear, suddenly cut through the studio. "You call this innovation. This is exploitation." Gasps. The audience turned. Camera 2 snapped to a wide shot. The woman in red stood up, holding a hand-painted banner that read, "No justice for workers, no applause for billionaires." Jimmy froze. Elon blinked. His body stiffened. The woman continued, "You sit here like a hero, but people suffer in your factories. You call them progress. We call it pain." The protester was Maya Jennings, a name no one in the studio knew yet, but the internet would within minutes. She was 27, a former contract engineer at one of Tesla's AI labs, fired after raising internal concerns about mental health policies. The words she shouted were rehearsed, deliberate, and personal. Security finally sprang into action, but Maya didn't move. She held her ground as long as she could, her voice rising with each word. "You're not saving the world. You're selling the future to the highest bidder." The banner was torn from her hands as 2 guards pulled her toward the side aisle. The audience was half shocked, half silent. A few scattered claps. Some shouted, "Let her speak," while others booed. Jimmy stood up, completely thrown. "Okay, we're going to take a quick break," he said, but Elon didn't move. He looked at Maya as she was pulled from the studio, not with anger, but with a strange sense of familiarity, like he knew this confrontation was coming, or had come before somewhere else. He spoke, almost to himself. "There it is. What was that?" Jimmy asked, half-stoned. "There it is," Elon repeated. "Louder now? Every time someone builds, someone else tears down." Jimmy stepped closer, unsure whether to wrap the segment or dig deeper. "Elon, do you want to respond to what she said?" Musk didn't answer immediately. He finally looked at Jimmy, then directly at the audience. "You want to hear a story?" he said. The room fell silent again. "In 2018, we nearly went bankrupt. We were burning billions just trying to get the Model 3 out. We worked 20 hours a day. I slept in the factory. You know why?" Nobody spoke. "So that we didn't have to lay off 20,000 people. So that we didn't have to tell the future it could wait. Yes, people cracked. Yes, we failed sometimes. But nobody gave me a script for this." The emotion was strange, controlled but raw, not rehearsed. "Chewie said, gesturing toward the studio cameras. Do you want a clean narrative? Hero or villain, there's no room for the gray." The camera panned slowly. The audience sat quietly, no laughter, no cue cards, just eyes watching. Jimmy finally stepped in again. "Okay, this is definitely not the interview I expected." "No," Elon said flatly. "It's the one you needed." The studio lights dimmed as the show went to commercial, but the tension refused to leave. Elon Musk remained standing. Jimmy Kimmel turned away, rubbing the back of his neck, whispering something to the floor producer. A buzz filled the air, not excitement, not panic, something colder. Like everyone in the room had realized they were inside a story far bigger than a late-night interview. Elon still had the printout in his hand. He turned it over. There was again, Maya Jennings. Expected disruption timeline. Priority level, yellow. Keep camera 3, framing wide. "Where did this come from?" he muttered, his voice low but sharp. The assistant who had dropped the folder young headset around his neck, clipboard trembling, reached out. That's nothing. It's just pre-interview prep." Elon's eyes narrowed. "That wasn't in your prep for me." Jimmy approached, forcing a smile. "Hey man, sometimes we get flagged about potential disruptions. Standard studio stuff." Elon didn't answer. His fingers tightened on the paper. Scanned the rest of the sheets. Most were segment breakdowns and lighting cues. But tucked beneath was another memo. Contingency cue, frame Musk post-disruption. Test audience mood. No redirect unless segment 5 breaks. Contingency cue, planned chaos. Elon looked up at Jimmy. "Did you know this was coming?" Jimmy's face fell. "Look, I don't handle guest security. We're a comedy show, not the CIA." "Could have fooled me," Elon said, his voice turning cold. "You bait me with Neuralink, then let that happen, then hand me a script to follow." "It wasn't a setup," Jimmy said quickly, though. He didn't sound sure anymore. "You've done enough media to know. Sometimes things go off the rails." Elon walked back to his chair, slower now, measured. A storm gathering under his usual control. "I built rockets to leave Earth," he said, not looking at anyone. "And yet every time I come on these shows, I feel more trapped than ever." A silent red light flicked on near camera 1. The commercial break was ending. The countdown began in the earpieces. 3, 2, 1. The show was live again. Jimmy smiled into the camera, but the energy had changed. "We're back with Elon Musk, definitely. One of our most eventful segments in a while." Musk gave a tight nod, keeping his hand over the papers now folded in his lap. Jimmy tried to steer the conversation back to business. "So, about Mars colonization. Still aiming for 2029. Elon stared at him, then slowly turned to the camera. "You want to talk about the future?" he said. "Okay, let's talk about what kind of world we're building. Not on Mars, right here." The audience leaned forward. So did millions. Watching at home. People think disruption only happens through technology, AI, robotics, space travel. But that's not the real war. The real war is narrative. Whoever controls the story controls the future. Jimmy blinked. Craw? You? Saying we single quotes part of some agenda. I'm saying someone is, Elon replied, lifting the crumpled paper just enough for the camera to catch a glimpse. This protest, this woman, she didn't just show up. She was allowed in. She was expected. There was a long, awkward silence. Are you implying we staged it? Jimmy asked, raising a brow. I'm implying someone wanted it to happen on your show at this time while I was discussing Neuralink. The audience murmured. Jimmy leaned back. That's a big accusation. Not an accusation. An equation, Elon said. You ask about Mars while someone else burns my company on live TV. Then I find documents about that exact disruption in your production folder, and you still want to talk about electric cars? Jimmy's face went pale. Let me be clear. We didn't plan any attack. That document, whatever it was, is not from us. Elon's voice dropped. 10. Whose? It from? Nobody answered. For a brief moment, the studio descended into a strange kind of quiet half television, half interrogation room. Jimmy tried to salvage it. All right, look, this is live. Things happen, we're going to move forward. But Elon wasn't done. He leaned forward, looking straight into the lens of camera 2. To the people watching this at home, he said, remember what I'm about to say? Every platform has a script. Every media segment has a purpose. You think you're watching an interview? You're watching a chessboard. And right now, someone just sacrificed a pawn. Twitter exploded. Clips of the moment were already flooding social feeds. Hashtag #MediaTrap trending within minutes. Commentators online began speculating. Who leaked the document? Who was behind this staged disruption? And most importantly, why target Musk now? Backstage, one of the assistant producers sent a message to the showrunner. He wasn't supposed to see that doc who leaked segment 6. No response. Just 3 blinking dots. Then silence. On screen, Elon stood again. I think we're done here. Jimmy opened his mouth to protest, but Elon had already begun to walk off stage, calm, direct, but unmistakably rattled. As he disappeared behind the curtain, one thing was clear. This was no longer just late-night drama. It was the start of something far more dangerous. The backstage hallway of Jimmy Kimmel Live was dim, not by accident, but designed dark enough to calm the eyes after the harsh glare of stage lights. Elon Musk walked briskly past cables and crew, not saying a word. The echo of his footsteps mixed with the muffled sounds of the ongoing show behind him. He reached the green room. A production assistant tried to intercept him, holding out a bottled water and murmuring, Mr. Musk, if you'd just wait. He didn't stop. He shut the door behind him and locked it. The room was still. The TV inside the room played the show on mute. Kimmel was stammering, trying to smooth the awkwardness that had just unfolded. Elon didn't look at the screen. Instead, he pulled the folded document from his blazer and read every line again. Contingency Q, disruption risk, moderate. Timing window, segment 4. Subject M. Jennings, prepared remarks. None. Capture reaction, Musk only. Capture reaction, only his reaction. He pulled out his phone and opened Signal. Secure line. He tapped a contact saved under a single letter, R. Message. They leaked it live. Who else has access to segment Q protocol notes? Reply came seconds later. Only internal. You, me, and Kimmel's floor team. He typed again. Then someone wanted it seen. Outside the room, there was a knock. Mr. Musk. The executive producer wants a word. He didn't answer. Inside the control booth, upstairs from the set, the showrunner, Kira Dennison, watched Elon's screen. Room feed with narrowed eyes. She didn't like chaos. She liked numbers, metrics, ratings. This kind of chaos broke records. One of her assistants, a young man with trembling hands, leaned in. You want me to send someone to escort him out? Kira stared at the screen. Elon was now pacing. No, she said. Let him cook. Back in the room, Elon finally looked up at the muted screen. Kimmel had moved on to a comedy sketch. The audience was laughing, but it felt hollow, forced. The earlier protests still loomed large on Twitter. Every few seconds, his phone vibrated with news alerts, hashtags, live reaction clips. But then something strange happened. His encrypted app pinged again. New message from R. Scratch that. One more has access. A late-stage script editor on ABC side. Freelance. She joined 2 days ago. Maya Jennings's cousin. Elon froze. Maya Jennings, the protester. The woman who interrupted the show holding the banner that said billionaires aren't saviors. Her cousin was in the building, on production staff. His mind began working in patterns. Threads began to connect. The disruption wasn't just theater, it was surveillance. They wanted to provoke him not just to get a soundbite, but to analyze his reaction. Watch him unravel in real time. Push him off message. He paced again. This time, faster. Something was off. Then the doorknob rattled. Not a knock this time. Just a rattle-soft, deliberate. Elon turned. Who is it? No answer. He took a slow step toward the door. His heart beat faster. Not from fear, but alertness. The precision of someone who had walked through launch. Protocols 1,000 times and knew when something didn't belong. Mr. Musk? A woman's voice finally said. It's Abby from Segment Notes. We need you back on stage for a rap. But it wasn't Abby. Elon had met Abby earlier. She had a distinct voice, Midwest nasal. This voice was smoother, lower. He didn't answer. He pulled out his phone again. New message. Are we just I dead the cousin? Her name isn't Abby. It's Lana Jennings. She was flagged in a private Tesla security memo last year, part of an anti-AI advocacy group. She disappeared after a protest in Berlin. Another ping. R again. Get out. Do not return to stage. Elon looked at the door, then at the emergency exit in the corner of the green room. Every part of his brain screamed at him that this wasn't just about bad PR, it was deeper. A setup, maybe even a trap. He grabbed his bag, turned off his phone, and quietly slipped through the emergency exit door. A silent hallway, no cameras. It's just a fire stairwell leading down toward the studio parking. Downstairs on stage A, Kimmel wrapped up the show. I want to thank Elon Musk for joining us. Always a pleasure, he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The audience applauded, but there was confusion. The guest chair was empty. The show was live, but Elon Musk had vanished. Kimmel glanced off camera. And now, the warped science guys with a demo about bending metal with sound. Producers scrambled behind the curtain. Where is he? One whispered. Another checked the green room. Empty security footage was requested. It showed Elon slipping out of the stairwell, face unreadable. Online, people noticed. The SUV rolled through downtown Los Angeles like a shadow-tinted windows, unmarked plates, and a driver Elon Musk didn't recognize. But that didn't matter. It had been arranged through a private protocol his security team activated when any broadcast disruption hit level 4. Intentional interference with psychological payload. He stared at the screen of his laptop. Still no reply to his question. Who funded segment Q? The cursor blinked, silent. The silence was louder than any alert. Next to him, a satellite phone buzzed. He picked it up. A voice calm but urgent spoke from the other side. It belonged to R, his anonymous insider in both tech policy and television intelligence. Elon didn't know R's real name. That was the point. She didn't act alone, R said. The protester, Maya Jennings. Her cousin Lana embedded at ABC 3 days ago, but she didn't write the segment. She only switched the cue cards. Then who did? Elon asked, fingers tightening. R hesitated. The cards were pre-approved by a third-party editorial group, one that's recently been paid by a London-based fund connected to the Clean Cyber Consortium. Elon closed his eyes. "I thought CCC was dissolved 2 years ago," he said. "They were on paper. But the new parent shell is Global Equilibrium Initiative. Same board, new face." He felt the chill return. GEI was known in closed circles not for hacking, but for media. Control operations, disrupting powerful narratives by planting seeds of chaos on live broadcasts. Musk had faced financial attacks before. Attacked. Political attacks, even smear campaigns, but never this. This was personal, and this was live. "They baited me into that studio," Elon said quietly. R responded, "They wanted to destabilize your credibility at the exact moment your Mars Treaty proposal hits the European Parliament." Elon raised his head. He'd nearly forgotten that detail. A leaked draft proposal authored by Musk's Foundation was due for committee review tomorrow in Brussels. It had called for private enterprise involvement in space, laws essentially allowing corporations, not nations, to colonize sectors of Mars. It wasn't just about ratings anymore. It was geopolitics. The protester, Maya, had screamed about worker rights. But what if her real goal was to draw blood from his reputation? A sudden beep. A new message appeared on the screen. Sender, anonymous subject, segment Q. Unredacted message, you are never supposed to read this, but you always do. Attachment.txt file titled Kimmel_Q_rehearsal_notes_final. Elon clicked the file. His eyes scanned line by line. Segment Q, Preflight Show Doc. Goal, emotional disruption. Focus, Musk's ethical contradictions, innovation versus exploitation. Method, live trigger via audience plant. Response path, drive defensiveness. Elicit facial stress cues. Record neurolinguistic shifts in tone. Secondary objective, leak footage to high-engagement anti-tech groups. He stopped reading. They hadn't. Just hoped he'd react. They had engineered it. The entire segment had been orchestrated not by Jimmy Kimmel himself, but by handlers. Researchers, outside producers, all of them managing layers of plausible deniability. Back at the studio, Lana Jennings had disappeared. ABC confirmed she walked out just after the protest and turned in her staff badge. She never went to wardrobe, never collected her check. Gone. Elon looked to his driver. "Pull into the Tesla Research Center," he ordered. "But sir, your residence," I said. "The research center." They turned sharply off the highway. Within minutes, the SUV rolled past biometric gates and entered the underground level of the Tesla campus-on area with no press access, no internal network logging, and no cloud connectivity. Elon walked inside, past empty workstations and hushed guards. He entered a narrow corridor and placed his hand on a scanner. A steel door unlocked. Inside was a war room, cold lighting, thick walls, and 6 screens glowing with heat maps, keyword traffic from social media and live news streams. His AI engineer, a man named Theo, stood waiting. "I know why you're here," Theo said. Elon nodded. "Can you trace who first shared the segment Q disruption clip?" Theo pulled up a display. Not a civilian, not even a burner. It originated from an encrypted node inside a State Department-affiliated university cluster. Elon blinked. "You're telling me the U.S. government helped circulate a clip designed to embarrass me?" Theo shook his head. "Not officially. But this node has previously been flagged for cyber-rhetorical influence ops. So this is psychological warfare," Elon muttered. Theo tapped the screen. "No, it's worse. It's legal psychological warfare. And if you respond emotionally, they win." Elon stood in silence. They were trying to make him lash out. On Twitter, on stage, in court, so they could point and say, "There, see? He's unstable, he's erratic, he's dangerous." He exhaled. "Then we don't play their game," he said. Theo raised an eyebrow. "You want to go public?" "No," Elon said. "I want to go inward. We find every producer, every funding source, every node involved in segment Q. Then we burn their game board. And how do we do that? Elon looked up at the screen. His reflection shimmered faintly on the glass. We remind them what happens when you try to control the story. Y'all forget who built the machines telling it? The war had just gone from public to private, and Elon Musk had just declared it personal. It was nearly midnight when the Tesla Research Center went dark electronically, not literally. Elon Musk gave the signal air gap protocol. No outside internet, no cloud mirroring, no Bluetooth. Only hard lines, locked ports, and a land that had not seen daylight in 5 years. This wasn't overreaction. It was containment. It's the segment Q. Sabotage had reached crisis level. 4 global networks had now picked up the protest clip from Kimmel's show, but none mentioned Maya Jennings by name anymore. They all focused on Elon's visible discomfort, on his silence, on his power being publicly questioned. CNN called it a historic unraveling of tech elitism. The Guardian said it was a reckoning years in the making. Fox News asked whether Musk's empire is built on sand. But it wasn't the headlines that troubled Elon. It was the coordination. Every post, every frame. Every story came simultaneously with similar phrasing, seeded across time zones. The metadata Theo extracted showed hundreds of bots retweeting within 4.3 seconds of each other. Coordinated, funded, weaponized. Across the lab. Theo was bent over a desk filled with trace maps and file trees. He had found something strange in the broadcast footage, something even the internet hadn't noticed yet. "Elon," he said. "Look at this." He played the freeze frame from the Kimmel show just seconds before Maya Jennings stood up to protest. There, behind her, seated 2 rows back, was a man in a navy blue hoodie. He didn't clap, didn't laugh, didn't move except to tap his leg twice, then look down. Theo zoomed in under the seat. A relay mic. Thin, barely visible. Not studio. Equipment, Elon, Theo said, voice low. That wasn't just a protest. Elon nodded. It was an activation. The relay mic had broadcast her voice at studio-level clarity, more than what a normal audience scream would allow. It had fed directly into the live mix. That's why Kimmel didn't cut away. That's why Elon's reaction had been so clear, so audible, so useful to the people behind it. They installed a device, Elon said, pacing now. Inside a national studio. On U.S. soil. During a live broadcast. Theo's face tightened. We're beyond civil media sabotage now. This is state-grade Psy-war. Elon looked at the timeline on the wall, a thin red thread connected key events from the past. 72 hours. Segment Q, rehearsal, Q edits. Unauthorized entry into a BC edit room. Protester enters Kimmel studio with a fake ID. Anonymous source, leaks. Clip across 4 continents. British firm registered as Maya's media agent. Political lobbying surge in Brussels. Over Mars sovereignty. Chinese botnet traffic spike with Musk hashtags. It wasn't one enemy. It was multiple fronts. Back in the corner of the room, a secure phone buzzed. Elon answered. It was R again. You were right, the voice said. The media leak came from a shadow account inside the EU's Special Commission for Tech Oversight. What were they? After Elon asked, discredit UB for next week's vote, R replied. If you lose this treaty, corporations lose their shot at independent Martian governance. That's hundreds of billions in off-world asset control. Space sabotaged me on comedy TV to influence a space law debate, Elon said. Yes, R answered. Because comedy is how the public digests morality now. And you weren't meant to fight back. Elon paused. Then let's change the script. He turned to Theo. Activate the core file. The K2 directive. Theo blinked. You're sure? Yes, Elon said. Everything. Footage analysis, signal tracing, identity maps. Release it all. It's tomorrow morning, unedited. With timestamps, digital proof, and names. Theo hesitated. That'll break open the Kimmel security breach. We'll be going against major networks, foreign influencers, even U.S. media regulators. Elon leaned in. And when they try to stop the upload, we'll stream it through Starlink. Let the people see what was orchestrated behind the scenes. Let them see that it wasn't a humiliating outburst. It was a targeted media trap. Silence settled in. Then Theo spoke. There's one more thing. We found her. Maya Elon turned sharply. She was spotted on CCTV at a safe house in Glendale. 20 minutes after the show. Not alone. Theo pressed a key. A new image filled the screen. Maya standing beside a tall, clean-cut man in a black coat, clearly ex-military. By sunrise, the world had already changed. What began as a protest during a late-night interview had exploded into a full-scale media crisis. But now, it was turning into something bigger, a digital war for the truth. At exactly 8 a.m. Eastern Time, millions of people around the world received a sudden alert, whether they were on YouTube, 10 formerly Twitter, Instagram, or even old-school Facebook. A live stream link titled, "The Footage They Tried to Erase, Uncut, Unfiltered, Undeniable." It was being broadcast directly through Starlink, Elon Musk's satellite network. No government server could block it. No algorithm could mute. It bypassed every traditional gatekeeper. Inside a simple black screen, a voice spoke. This is not about one man. This is about power, perception, and the weaponization of truth. Watch and decide for yourself. The stream began. It played everything. The full Kimmel show in cut. Maya Jennings' exact entry and seating position. The hidden audio device placed 2 hours before the broadcast. A time-stamped log showing how foreign news networks received pre-written protest headlines before the show even aired. A digital footprint of the botnet used to amplify the clip within 9 seconds of it going live. And then the safe house footage. Security camera images of Maya being led into a black SUV by a man in a Lamina Group uniform. The camera zoomed in on the patch, the timestamp, and even the vehicle's license plate traced back to a shell company in Geneva. The internet exploded. Hashtags like hashtag #SetUpMusk, hashtag media warfare, and hashtag who controls truth began trending in over 30 countries. Even news anchors who had mocked Musk the night before were now forced to cover the deeper story. Jimmy Kimmel, watching from his LA home, sat frozen. He never wanted this to happen. He thought it was just a show. Just laughs, just ratings. But he had unknowingly walked into a war that had already begun long before the first joke landed. By 10:30 a.m., the White House had issued a brief statement. We are aware of allegations involving foreign interference and media manipulation. A joint investigation is underway. The European Parliament postponed the Mars Governance Treaty. Vote tenantly. Even late-night shows began to pull upcoming tech interviews. No one wanted to be the next battleground. No one wanted to risk becoming part of what journalists were now calling the Kimmel incident. And Elon? He didn't go quiet. He gave his own live statement from a Tesla facility in Texas. No teleprompter. No suit, no PR manager. Just a dark hoodie, a table, and the files laid bare. His message was short. For too long, we've accepted filtered truths handed to us by media giants, sponsored narratives, and billionaire-funded agendas. But truth doesn't fear protest. Truth doesn't flinch on camera, and truth doesn't die in silence. This wasn't about me. This was a message to every voice that dares to challenge the system. And the message is clear: if they can do this to me, they can do it to you. Across the globe, the reactions varied. In Washington, hearings were already being scheduled. In Beijing and Moscow, state media called it proof of Western chaos. In London, MI5 quietly reopened a file labeled Operation Eclipse Media Destabilization via Civilian Platforms. But for everyday people, the ones who had watched, commented, argued, and doubted something felt different now. The curtain had been pulled back. And what they saw wasn't just Elon Musk. It was a system built on shadows. In classrooms, students debated who controls the truth in the age of live streams. In cafes, Workers asked if their favorite TV moments were ever truly real. And on the streets of New York, someone spray painted on a subway wall, "Truth isn't viral, it's buried." Back in the control room, Elon watched the numbers rise. 12 million views, then 14, then 23. Not just on one platform, on all of them. Every effort to take the video down was stopped. Every attempt to discredit the leak only brought more eyes to it. Theo leaned over and said, "They'll hit back hard." "I know," Elon replied. "But now, the world knows." He stood, reached for his coat, and paused before leaving the room. Behind him on the big screen, the last scene of the broadcast looped one final time. It was Elon on Kimmel, frozen at the moment, Maya shouted from the crowd. But now people didn't see a billionaire embarrassed. They saw a warning shot, a moment when truth collided with theater and fiction shattered under the weight of evidence. The protest was real. But the setup was deeper, and what came next would decide. Who shapes the future? Algorithms, governments, or the people finally awake? The end.